All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andy Cotgreave. I'm from Tableau Software. It's great to be in Stockholm today. What does your phone data tell you, reveal about you? And what does that have to do with data innovation? Data innovation is about helping people see and understand their data, not just the data scientists, not just the analysts. The important word in that sentence is about people. Every single worker in your organization has data, and they need to be able to see and understand it and get the insight from it, whether it's a Hadoop cluster or a 10,000 row CSV file. And I want to frame that conversation today by looking at data privacy and data retention or data protection. In the UK at the moment, our government is trying to push through laws to reform the data privacy laws and impose phone providers and ISPs, get them to retain data for at least a year or maybe two. And the British public is kind of ambivalent about this. And I think it's because they don't appreciate just what the metadata inside this device and all your devices reveals about people. In researching this talk, I discovered the same is true in Sweden. You've got an ISP which has refused to provide your government with the data should they request it. And in Sweden, there is a back and forth between the EU Human Rights Court as well. And it's a really interesting topic because we need intelligence organizations to be able to see data and investigate things. But I just don't think people realize quite what the data reveals. So we're going to look at that today. So what does it reveal about you? Well, fortunately, or well, whatever you think of these laws, in Australia, they have implemented these laws already. They are keeping phone metadata about the Australian citizens. And when the Australian Prime Minister introduced the laws, he said, "Don't worry, Australia. It's just like your phone bill data." And thus everybody was satisfied and calmed down. But really, was it metadata? Well, was it just the phone bill data? Well, what Will Ockenden did, he's a journalist at ABC in Sydney. He got hold of this metadata, 1 year's worth of his phone metadata. It took him a long time. It was quite a fight. But then he shared that CSV file with the internet, with people like you and me, and asked the world, what does this phone data reveal about him? And it's really interesting finding out in just, I've got 12 minutes and 3 seconds left, we're going to see what we can find out about Will's data. And I am on a duplicated screen. All right, so what I'm going to do is, this is Tableau. I've already connected to Will's CSV file. So let's go on an exploration and do visual analytics with this data set. There are 10,400 rows of data in this data set. Each one represents a time Will's phone pinged or communicated with a cell tower. When did he do this? Well, let's look at date and time. We can see over time, he looked at the data. He had data from 2014 to 2015. And as we drill in, we can see by month, we can see monthly peaks, now weekly peaks. And by day, we can see something pretty interesting. A huge amount of communication on 23rd of December, possibly last-minute Christmas shopping, who knows. And these peaks start popping out. What about the way he uses his phone? Does he make phone calls or text message or use the internet? Well, he text messages every now and then. He actually doesn't use his phone very much as a phone, which is an interesting insight, probably like most of us. But the internet usage, look at this pattern. There's that huge peak in December, but we instantly get some insight here. Will's first internet communication with his phone was on the 23rd of September. So just from his metadata, I can work out when Will got a smartphone. Before the 23rd of September, he was just using an old-fashioned phone, and then he could connect to the internet and waste all his time, as we all do. So that's amazing. And if we just change the way this chart looks, like if we go from a line to a bar, then we begin to see other insights. What's happening here? There's this big gap, which began on the 9th of February 2015, and Will disappeared for about a month. Did he lose his phone? Did he go on holiday? What happened? We'll find out in a minute. So that's when. What about where? Well, in the phone metadata that our phone collects, we have the latitude and longitude of every cell tower that Will communicated with. And if we size these circles according to the number of times Will's phone communicated with each cell tower, I now know where Will lives. He lives here near Sydney, because that's the biggest one. Sydney is in New South Wales, so let's just get rid of the nulls, get rid of Tasmania, and get rid of Victoria. And these are the cell towers that Will communicates with. I'll just make a couple of changes to make it a little bit clearer. I'll add colour so it's easier to see, and I will draw a circle for every day that the phone communicates. Right, so what's happening here, each circle represents a cell tower. The size and colour, or it represents a cell tower and the day on which Will's phone communicated with that cell tower. And the size and colour represents the number of times it pinged that cell tower. Now, you can't really see, there's a few data points up here. If I just lasso them, he obviously went on a road trip. If I want to know where Will lives and works, I don't need those for this analysis, so I'll just exclude them on the fly. So this is where Will uses his phone the most. We've got 3 clusters, one in the north of beaches of Sydney, one in the central business district area, and another one in the south. And in order to ask questions about where Will lives and works, we need to then sort of say, well, on which days of the week does Will use his phone? We've got the 10,000 communications, and then we'll draw it by weekday. Will uses his phone mostly on a Tuesday and not so much at the weekends. Interesting. What about the hours of day? I'll duplicate this view and just change the date aggregation. You know, I just want to go, instead of day, we could look at minute, second, but I look at hour. Will uses his phone mostly at 6 o'clock. We are beginning to get an indication of Will's daily lifestyle patterns. And this is what your phone data tells about you too. So that was, what's that? Which hours? So we've asked 3 sets of questions at the moment. We've asked, where does he use the phone? Which days does he use the phone? And which hours does he use the phone? 3 views brought together, you know, that could be called a dashboard, or it could just be called exploratory analytics, where now I'm just saying to use each one as a filter. Now when I click on any of these charts, they will filter out the other ones. Where does Will live? I expect Will is at home mostly on a Saturday and Sunday, like most people in the crowd. So the map is now updated, and we can see there's a big cluster in the north area of Sydney here. It looks like this is where Will lives. But we can ask that question in a little bit more detail and say, well, on a Saturday and Sunday, in the small hours of the night, you know, where are we at 2 a.m. on a Sunday? Well, personally, I'm at home. I don't need to know your personal habits, but I'm at home. So where is Will on a Saturday and Sunday in the small hours of the night? Look at that cell tower. That is the cell tower which Will's phone pings at home. So we know just from metadata where he lives. The next question would be where he works. I mean, by deduction, we can kind of work out it's down here. But if we just lasso these areas of this area in Sydney, anybody who knows Sydney knows this is the central business district. But by choosing the map and then looking at Will's hourly daily usage, we can see he uses the phone there during the week. So clearly this is where Will works. And one of my favorite insights into this data set is, okay, so if we select the map where he works and then the working weekdays, so Monday to Friday, when does Will use the phone on Monday to Friday? And what I can see here is there's 3 peaks. 9 a.m. is kind of when he's getting to work. Noon, lunchtime, is when he probably takes a break. Then he works again in the afternoon. And at 5 o'clock, he's back on the phone, you know, end of day, phoning friends and family. Interesting. What about if Will works at home? What happens when he works at home? I'm going to lasso the home cell towers instead and see what happens. So it was 9, 12, and 5 when he's at work. When he's at home, he starts work an hour later. The morning peak is at 10 a.m. Now, if I was his boss, would I be upset about that? Possibly. But you'll notice that his evening peak is not till 6 p.m. So when Will works at home, he shifts his whole day an hour later. So that's kind of good performance. And in fact, as a boss, I'd be even more happy because he doesn't appear to take that lunchtime break when he's working at home. So if I had all your working metadata, I would know when you work at home and when you're most efficient at home or in the office. It's pretty powerful stuff. So we know where Will lives and where he works. But there was this question earlier on. I asked about the gap in the data. So I'll get rid of the weekdays. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see the gap. And I'll use this one as a filter. Will disappeared on the 9th of February. So I've now clicked on this chart. Where was Will on the 9th of February? Well, anyone who knows Sydney knows that this, and you can see on the map, is the Sydney airport. There are 2 terminals at the airport. There's this one on the east side, which is the domestic terminal. And there's this one, which is where Will spent that time, which is the international terminal. And he was there till midday, and he took a flight at midday. So what we've discovered from Will's metadata, and we could do this with all your phone metadata, is where he lives, where he works, where he plays, and when he takes international flights. And he came back on the 3rd of March, and you can see he spent almost the whole day back at home, presumably recovering from jet lag. Now, this is incredible stuff. It's really powerful. All we've done is drag and drop some stuff around. And the last thing I'll do is just ask what was going on the 23rd of December. Well, if I just click on the 23rd of December, he was down here in Hobart, which is in Tasmania in the south. Kind of near these 3 places. So was he doing last-minute shopping, or was he just being looked after by his mum and he was sat on the sofa looking at the internet on his phone? I don't know, but I know where he was for Christmas. That was a lightning exploration of data. And we have found out a huge amount about Will in fact, I did that in 8 or 9 minutes. In that time, we worked out when he got a smartphone, where he lives, where he works, when he starts working in the office, when he starts work at home, where he was at Christmas, and when he went on an international holiday. So if I had your phone metadata, what could I find out about you in 8 minutes? I don't know. So I hope that's been interesting, because I think it's important to grasp exactly what your phone reveals about you, and that can help educate people when they think about the debate and the challenge of these laws as we try and reform the data protection laws. But on a bigger picture, what does this have to do with data innovation? To me, I'm really delighted that the organizers of this conference didn't call it the Big Data Innovation Summit, because A, that's cliched, but it's just data, right? People in your organization have CSVs with 100 rows or 1,000 rows, and they need to be able to go beyond data visualization. Data visualization is just one stop, one chart, one question, and one answer. Whereas when you can explore the data, and when anybody can explore their data in the way we've just seen, that's visual exploration. And one of the key things that our core beliefs at Tableau is that we want to empower everybody who has the data to ask and answer their own questions. Because when they play with data in that way, that you can just drag and drop it around and get insights and do complex analytics very, very quickly, it creates this sensation of flow. The technology kind of melts away into the background, and people feel empowered. They're asking the questions themselves. They're not reliant on other people. They're not reliant on the hugely talented but time-poor data analysts or data scientists. It's about empowering the individual. And when we get to that situation, we can find out all sorts of information about your phone data, but imagine what it would be if it was your basic business operations or basic business data. And to me, that is what data innovation is about. Thank you.